I will say at this point that I'm very proud and privileged to present to you, our community, the 2013 annual report for the Village of Downers Grove, which is also sometimes known as the State of the Village Address. As many of us know, there is a long tradition in our country of the chief executive of a political body giving a State of the Union type of address. In fact, it's a concept that is embodied in Article 2, Section 3 of the United States Constitution. There is an equally long history of that chief executive officer announcing at some point during the State of the Union address that the State of the Union is strong. And that statement is usually met with raucous, choreographed applause. I will ask neither one of those things from you tonight. I'm also not going to tell you tonight that the state of our village is strong. No, instead I'm going to show you that the state of our village is both strong and on a path of sustained success. Now, in the interest of time, because it's hard to summarize an entire year in the time that my colleagues would permit before they started to throw things at me, I'm going to focus on a number of key examples that I believe will lead you to the inevitable, irrefutable conclusion that we are in a strong state and on a path of sustained success. And importantly, please note that our strength is not measured solely in terms of financial position, but also in terms of prudent governance, creative and strategic vision, exceptional and innovative performance, and of course, good stewardship of public assets. Let's begin with sustainability of financial and environmental assets. I'd like to walk through a few examples. Very excitingly, last year, as most of you know, Standard & Poor's improved the village's bond rating to AAA, which is the highest rating that it could achieve. This distinction places the Village of Downers Grove among the elite communities in our nation. There are only about 23 or so municipalities in the entire state of Illinois that have this distinction of the AAA bond rating. Now, this means many things, and some folks have asked me, gee, that sounds really great, but what does that really mean for me, the resident of Downers Grove, or a business in Downers Grove? Well, number one, what it means is that it's independent confirmation of the village's sound financial management practices, as verified by an independent outside entity. It also has allowed us to achieve the lowest cost of borrowing money that we could because of that good rating. And for example, it has already saved us approximately $90,000 on downtown tax increment financing of bonds associated with the downtown TIF. But just of that alone, the improved credit rating, or bond rating, translated into $90,000 savings. This rating is also, as Mr. Casa will tell you, is a very useful economic development tool in terms of attraction and retention of businesses to our community, because they know that they are in a well-managed community. Now, I mentioned refunding TIF bonds. A couple of the other things that we did last year was to, as I mentioned, refund both the downtown TIF bonds as well as the library bonds. Now, this is part of the village staff always keeping its eyes out for opportunities to reduce expenses without reducing services. So when opportunities present themselves to refinance bond debt service for either, in this case, the library or the downtown TIF, they jump at those opportunities with advance notice and approval from the village council. And just to translate that into dollars for you, these opportunities with respect to the downtown TIF bond, that debt service payments were reduced by $478,000, and the library debt service payments were reduced by about $132,000. Now, these steps both reduce the amount that the village may have to tax the general public on future property tax levies in order to pay that debt, but it also assists, at least in the case of the library debt service, assists our library partners by reducing debt service payments and freeing up funds for building improvements. And I know Mr. Loftus, who sits on our library board, is here tonight, and I'm sure he certainly appreciates the fact that we would free up funds for building improvements, knowing that the library is in the midst of pursuing a number of improvements to their facility. Another example of what 2013 saw was further improvement of the fiscal 2014 budget message and presentation. And I'm talking, of course, about our actual budget document. This has improved light years over what it has been since I first viewed it when I first became involved with the Village Council in, believe it or not, 2002. And It is really a document that not only celebrates our successes, but makes that very easily understood by members of the public, because of course our accomplishments in terms of our financial strength are diminished if they are not readily discernible by the public. This is really an improved understanding of the village's planned use of resources, improves the relationship between the fiscal 2014 budget and the long-range plan. Those two things are much better tied together so folks can see what the strategic vision is, how it ties into and drives the actual budget document, and therefore the various actions that take place over the next fiscal year. And as I mentioned, this document is easier to read and easier to understand than ever before, and that is a true testament to our staff's ability to constantly improve the document, because it is one of the most important things that we put out. People want to know where the revenue goes and how it is spent. That's very important. Well, speaking of revenue, one of the biggest parts of our budget is the general fund. And I'm very pleased to point out that as we saw the economy generally start to improve, last year alone we saw improvement in our revenues along with further reductions in some costs. Particularly with respect to the general fund, that balance increased by about $820,000. And these dollars, importantly, can now be used for infrastructure improvements and public safety related needs. So that's very good news. We did have some bad news in 2013, and that was right around April 13th and 14th of 2013. Anyone who was not on the moon at that time will remember the near biblical rains that we experienced and the flooding that followed it. Those rains and the flooding associated with it hit our village and our residents pretty hard. Well, the Village of Downers Grove worked with other governments and agencies to obtain federal funds to help mitigate those costs. By working with FEMA, we were able to receive for the village, and I'll talk about individual assistance a little bit later in the presentation, but for the village we received just over $100,000 from FEMA in order to cover some of our unexpected and unanticipated flood response related costs. So that was a positive, something good that came out of something that wasn't so pleasant at the time. Well, now I'd like to turn to municipal services and what I'm going to call neatly providing exceptional municipal services. Now you might ask, well, what do you mean by neatly providing exceptional municipal services? Does that mean that everybody's wearing a white jumpsuit and tweezers and picking up along with them? Is everything neat and tidy? No, I'm actually referring to one of the alternative definitions of the word neat. Now, if you look at Merriam-Webster online, my favorite, definition 4B, which is one of the alternative definitions for neat, means as follows: marked by skill or ingenuity, adroit. And that's the definition that I choose to apply when referring to how the village provides exceptional municipal services. We have and continue to employ a lean approach to managing our organization and delivering services. L-E-A-N. And I'm just going to make up another government acronym here because that's one of the things we do very well. And from this point forward, lean shall hereby be known as leveraging existing assets neatly. Of course, adopting the definition of neat that I shared with you a moment ago. That is, marked by skill or ingenuity. The culture of lean has been fully integrated within this organization and is part of the day-to-day activities of everyone within the organization. How can we do things better? By leveraging our existing resources with skill or ingenuity. And in 2013, the village continued to apply that lean approach to provide the same or better service at less cost in a number of areas. And I'll just share a few examples with you. One was entering into a new electricity supply contract, which resulted in a savings of about $11,000. A new mobile phone contract netted an additional $12,000 savings. By privatizing electrical licensing testing, which is something the village has historically provided, that also resulted in savings. And the one that's being highlighted right now is enhanced street sweeping. And this really achieves two benefits for our community. Number one, improved stormwater quality, which is very important and will be something I'll be mentioning on multiple occasions tonight, but also of the quality and the appearance of our streets. And the enhanced street sweeping efforts that were implemented last year is really a terrific example of providing better service with less investment of village staff. And while those dollar amounts may not sound as large as some of the ones that I mentioned, they add up pretty quickly. And they add up not only within a year, but year after year after year. Just another example of that lean concept. Some of the other things that we did that I'm going to talk about under the umbrella of exceptional municipal services is completing the historic building survey. Now, what's all this about? Well, as just about everyone probably knows, the village is over 180 years old and is very rich with both history and local wonders. And we celebrate that history by recognizing and cherishing it. One way we have done that was by adopting the Historic Preservation Ordinance in 2007, not uncoincidentally, on the 175th anniversary of the village's founding. But a key next step in the process of historic preservation was completing our historic building survey. That allowed us and allowed the village to continue to participate in the Certified Local Government Program, which makes it easier for residents to choose to take advantage of state and federal historic preservation programs and funding. This survey and its completion provides important information on historic buildings and neighborhoods within our community in order to facilitate voluntary designation of buildings or neighborhoods as historically or architecturally significant. And so that's something that we're very glad to see come to fruition at this stage. A few other things I want to mention are the creation of a new retiree health insurance plan. Here's an example of where we turned inward to our own employees, where the village saw an opportunity to maintain important benefits with lower expenses. This new plan reduced annual expenses by about $70,000. And of course, it wouldn't be a Downers Grove State of the Village or annual report if I didn't mention the words communication, cooperation, and collaboration, because here in Downers Grove, partnerships are paramount. Communication, cooperation, and collaboration continue to be keys to sustaining our success while respecting the limits of finite resources. 2013 saw the Village of Downers Grove embrace new partnerships above and beyond those we previously have enjoyed. Here's some examples. We approved a Park District Fleet Maintenance Agreement, obviously in conjunction with the Downers Grove Park District. We are participating in a joint newsletter delivery with both the Downers Grove Park District and School District 58, and have began dispatching for the Sanitary District with respect to their calls. So again, working with other taxing bodies here in Downers Grove allows us to continue to communicate, collaborate, and coordinate with our partners and other agencies to the benefit of our mutual constituents. Let me share with you a few additional examples. The village also launched a special needs identification program that enables the police department to use a master list for identifications and finding persons at risk of wandering. We hosted a school safety town hall meeting last February, which enhanced working relationships with District 58 and increased public awareness about safety measures undertaken by both the village and School District 58. The village, of course, also hosted stormwater education workshops in conjunction with the implementation of the new stormwater utility that I'll touch upon in a little bit. These workshops were not only educational on that topic, but also enhanced relationships with residents and businesses within our community, and at the same time connected local businesses with residents who attended those meetings. And of course, most importantly, it increased awareness of the stormwater issues that we have in Downers Grove, as well as the stormwater utility and available credits and incentives in order to mitigate the stormwater utility fee. I mentioned a little bit earlier how the village had worked with FEMA in order to obtain available funds back to offset the cost of the village's expenses incurred in responding to the flood events of April of 2013. Well, that was the publicly available dollars. There were also individually available dollars for residents who were saddled with the impact of the April 2013 flooding events. And the village worked with FEMA to make sure that we not only achieved on behalf of residents, but ultimately resulted in the distribution of over $1.6 million to 522 Downers Grove residents to help them and their families deal with the April 2013 flood damages expenses. And then speaking of stormwater, I do want to underscore one other thing, which we've mentioned before, but it bears repeating. Clearly, stormwater is an important issue in Downers Grove. It's an important issue with respect to the environment in which we live in our community, but it's also something that we have to be mindful of because of federal regulations, primarily the Federal Clean Water Act. But all our efforts with respect to improving stormwater and management and flood risk mitigation have some other benefits. And one of those was that because of our ongoing efforts, the village improved its community rating system, or CRS, from 7 to 6, 1 being the best. This improved rating points, first of all, to the effectiveness of the village's proactive approaches to flood risk mitigation and stormwater management, but also will result in a 20% flood insurance premium discount for property owners who live within the floodplain. And this represents a 5% increase in the discounts over the current rates as part of the National Flood Insurance Program, or NIFP. All of this, I believe, translated into thousands of dollars in premium savings on average for the most affected residents. So some real dollar savings to real residents from our stormwater efforts. Now, speaking of stormwater, of course, 2013 could not come and go without talking about maintaining and enhancing top quality infrastructure, and the first order of business would of course be the implementation of the new stormwater utility, which was implemented in the very beginning of 2013. Now, the background, of course, is that the stormwater utility adopted by Downers Grove and implemented last year was the result of nearly a decade of investigation, assessment, input, and discussion about the best way to pay for the costs and the rising costs of stormwater infrastructure and maintenance. The council and the village determined that shifting to a stormwater fee would be a more logical, equitable, sustainable, accountable, and responsible way to fund stormwater infrastructure and maintenance costs. By shifting over to a fee, it also increased annual revenue available for stormwater infrastructure and maintenance by about $1 million by more fairly spreading the costs and the expenses in terms of the runoff that is generated by parcels within our community. We now have a more dedicated funding source that will be used to maintain and improve the stormwater system here within Downers Grove to meet not only the county stormwater requirements, but also the unfunded mandates such as the Federal Clean Water Act, which we have no choice but to comply with, but are provided no funds with which to do so. But it wasn't all about stormwater in 2013. We also completed $20 million in capital projects. And yes, now I'm talking streets, water, and sidewalks. Oh my. These projects were all done, the $20 million, without change orders and within budget, which is terrific and also a testament to the good management by our public works and other staff out in the field, making sure those projects go as planned. This is part of our continuing efforts to make great strides in catching up on street repair and street reconstruction projects, which is very important because it helps to reduce the life cycle costs of our ownership of those street systems. Just to give you a few examples of projects that took place last year, Washington Street at about $861,000 project, Concord Square Unit 2, which was about $2.8 million project, Oak Grove Unit 3, which was about a $1.5 million project, and general roadway maintenance of over $4 million. And those were streets. And I know that a lot of our residents have been noticing visibly the improvements in streets condition throughout the community as these projects continue, and there will be more. With respect to the water system, last year we connected 22 recently annexed parcels, annexed to the village of Downers Grove that is, to our water system. The water main loop in the annexed area was just under a $500,000 project, and other water main replacements last year were just north of $1.2 million in terms of the scope of the project. And we also, speaking of sidewalks, although they do have to be shoveled, the village invested over $500,000 in the construction of new sidewalks throughout the community as part of its long-term effort to make sure that there's at least one sidewalk on every street in Downers Grove. And we're getting very close to completing that project. Construction projects. One of them that was somewhat nettlesome and was out there for some time and had been the topic of discussion on this dais on more than one occasion was finally completing construction of the downtown dumpster enclosure. And if you've been to the Downers Grove parking deck, you will now notice the new dumpster enclosure that's featured on the screen right now. And if you come to the Coffee with the Council on Saturday, this will be not too far away. And it's a great improvement over what was there before, which were open dumpsters. This project, once the village took control of it, was completed in one construction season and has reduced the cost of refuse collection for the participating businesses that jointly use this location to place their waste. And I think all will agree, greatly improve the appearance of the area near the parking deck. We also sometimes focus on infrastructure that is not our own. And one example would be the electrical infrastructure within the village of Downers Grove. Last year, we hosted the third annual ComEd Town Hall meeting with respect to the infrastructure owned by ComEd that provides electrical service in the village of Downers Grove. As part of that town hall meeting, as we've done on prior occasions, the village facilitated ComEd responses to residents and businesses who had experienced electrical reliability issues throughout the year. And in particular, that meeting, we focused on residents in the Deer Creek and Hillcrest areas of our town. This is a continuing effort to enhance our relationship with ComEd to the benefit of our shared constituents, and has generated specific work lists for items for ComEd to address in the future. And while we're never completely satisfied with the progress that they've made, they are making progress, and we stay on it, and we're glad to see that every year these town hall meetings do bring relief and improvements to the affected areas. I mentioned economic development a little bit earlier, and of course a main focus of the Village of Downers Grove is always to build and maintain a strong and diverse local economy. Like your body, of course, a strong and diverse economy requires some sweat equity, and both the village and the Economic Development Corporation in Downers Grove have been working hard throughout 2013 to identify and pursue opportunities for new attraction and retention of businesses in our community. I'd like to talk about some of the economic development wins in 2013 that were a direct result of that sweat equity. And there are a number reflected here on the screen by the presence of their logos. For example, the American Society of Gastrointestinal Endoscopy opened their headquarters, I just want to say that one more time, opened their headquarters in Downers Grove last year. It is an extraordinarily handsome facility. If you ever have an opportunity to visit it, don't be thrown off by terms like gastrointestinal endoscopy. It's quite a very handsome facility and state-of-the-art in terms of what it contains. Big news, of course, was Advocate Healthcare, the parent of our Advocate Healthcare Good Samaritan Hospital here in Downers Grove, moved its headquarters from another community to the Highland Landmark building here in Downers Grove. Now, that is significant for a number of reasons, not the least of which is that Advocate Healthcare is the largest healthcare employer in the entire state of Illinois, and they now call Downers Grove their home. Just a few other examples in the interest of time. Grundfos, an international manufacturer of high-tech water pump technology, a Danish company, opened their North American headquarters at 2001 Butterfield. And I have to say I'm quite miffed by the fact that Governor Quinn, in his State of the State address, mentioned Grundfos, clearly trying to steal my thunder from tonight's presentation. Javi Global Solutions opened their headquarters at 3500 Lacey Road. Invesco Power Shares, we added to that list. Midwestern University wasn't satisfied with one entry, but they had to have two. One was the opening of their new dental clinic, and also began construction on their auditorium. They are always improving their campus, and we're glad to see them improving their area because it also improves our area. Ray O'Haron will be locating at the Grove Shopping Center in Downers Grove. Speaking of shop, new grocery store Shop and Save opened their latest location over on Lamont Road. Probably the longest deli counter I have ever seen, that's for sure. Univar announced some time ago that we'll be opening its headquarters at Highland Landmark, and more recently, Art Van Furniture is going to be opening in the long vacant Home Depot Expo building over on the north end of town. We're very glad to see that. And of course, I would be neglectful if I didn't mention two of Commissioner Durkin's favorite topics: the new Lamborghini dealership that will be locating on Ogden Avenue, as well as the Aston Martin dealership that will be locating on Ogden Avenue. All of that is good news, and again, a testament to work by the village staff and also the Economic Development Corporation, its staff, and all of its members. And overall, we're happy to report that 2013 saw a sales tax revenue increase of about $400,000. So that's good news. It's definitely moving in the right direction, and we hope to see more of that, and we'll continue to work towards more of that in 2014. And how do we do that? Well, one thing that I think is pretty clear here in Downers Grove is that innovation just isn't continuous, it's contagious. And I want to talk about some innovative things that happened in 2013 under the auspices of the Village of Downers Grove. And they also provide examples of some of those words that I like to use, such as collaboration, consolidation, communication, recognition. Let's talk about a few of them. Very recently, we created the Fairview Fire District SSA, or Special Service Area, and that was designed to fix a problem that had been festering a long time, where there was a paper fire district that existed within our community that really was not getting services the way it should, was grossly underfunded, and was just destined to become much, much worse with time. A solution was badly needed. By working with both the Fairview Fire District itself, DuPage County, and the Village of Downers Grove, as well as the affected residents, working together, we were able to come up with a permanent funding source for the provision of village fire and EMS services to that area, which increases the village revenues by about $40,000, but most importantly provides a sustainable, and long-term solution for providing services in that area, and the funding to make sure that it is there well into the future. It also provides a step towards the elimination of the paper fire protection district pursuant to a new state law that facilitates that, which hopefully it's already achieved the goal of collaboration, but will also eventually perhaps achieve the goal of reducing overlapping and unnecessary units of government, which will of course support the goal of consolidation. So very good example there, touching upon a couple of different of the C's: communication, collaboration, cooperation. The Village of Downers Grove last year, because it is a leader when it comes to environmental sustainability, we wanted to recognize businesses within our community that share the same vision and level of importance with respect to environmental sustainability by creating our new Green Business Program. So I put this one under the category of recognition. This program improves and enhances Village's relationship with the business community by recognizing their own efforts, and our first recognized businesses included Competitive Lawn Service, Bales Engineering, and good old Advocate Good Samaritan Hospital. Once again, coming through. This helps, among other things, to create awareness of environmental sustainability efforts occurring throughout Downers Grove, and quite frankly, encourages other businesses to do likewise, from which we all benefit. One of the things that the village did in terms of its interaction with members of the public is launching the council remarks website feature, and I emphasize that E because in the word it's a capital E. It's the opportunity for residents who visit our website, where you see the village council agenda listed. There is a little area that you can click on right there on the website when you read an agenda item and provide your remarks, and they will be communicated to village staff and to the village council. This is another tool of which I think we may have to get a larger toolbox. We have so many tools to communicate with our residents. It allows them to interactively engage with village council and village staff with respect to items that will be discussed. We are actively promoting it because it has seen some traffic, but not as much as we would like. So hopefully, as people get more used to it, they will use it more as a tool by which to communicate with the village. And it provides residents with the ability to participate in village council meetings in this regard remotely, anytime, anywhere. So again, I encourage all folks who haven't to at least check it out. And if you have something on your mind, please feel free to share it with us. Speaking of interactive, something that's really cool that was rolled out last year was the new interactive community maps, another form of communication hitting that goal. The interactive maps that are on the village website provide residents with information about ongoing village projects, amenities, and events going on in the community from any computer or mobile device. Now what I like about it is you can also click on some of those little hard hats there and see what projects might, or the little icon of the guy with the shovel, and see what projects might be going on in your neighborhood. And ultimately, you will be linked to portions of our community investment program that will give you details on what that project is, what it involves, its scope, its cost, its budget, expected time frame. Pretty neat stuff. And speaking of neat stuff, one of the other things that we were able to accomplish quite creatively last year was the facilitation of the relocation of a demolition company that was located perhaps not in the ideal location within our town, and vacating the consent decree that allowed it to exist in the first place. This was an attempt to try to address resident concerns about noise, dust, and whatnot from that business, and if all works out, we'll permanently eliminate this use in that neighborhood, which both improves the village's reputation and relationship with the residents and relocates an incompatible use to a more compatible area. And that took some creative thinking and proposals to make that happen. And as long as we're talking about awesome achievements and acknowledgments, it would be neglectful once again if I didn't mention some of the awards that the Village of Downers Grove received in 2013, which adds to a long list of awards and recognitions that the village has received in the last number of years, wherein it continues to be recognized both regionally and nationally as a leader in effective governance and delivery of municipal services. And I'll just share a few examples. We received last year the Governor's Sustainability Award. We received the Clean Cities Coalition Green Fleet Award, the award entitled Illinois Traffic Safety Challenge. Our finance department, which has so many awards that I think they need another wall to hang them on in the back here, received a couple that I'll note. One is the Government Finance Officers Association, or GFOA, Award for Distinguished Budget, and also the Certificate of Achievement for Excellence in Financial Reporting for the Comprehensive Annual Financial Report that came out in 2013. Also, Movoto Real Estate ranked Downers Grove one of the top 10 best cities in the state of Illinois, and clearly they hadn't spent enough time here. We would have been number 1 rather than one of the top 10, but we'll work on them on that. And also just want to mention one other thing. Speaking of national and regional recognition of our village and staff, in April 2013, Mike Baker, our Deputy Village Manager, Marcia Giesler, and Dave Fieldman presented at a convention put on by Alliance for Innovation, which is a organization that fosters innovation and other cutting-edge thinking with respect to delivery of municipal services and other municipal issues, national organization. Their presentation at that conference was so popular that they were asked later to host a national webinar on the very same topic, and was clearly one of the favorite presentations. Mr. Baker was then asked to submit an article, which he did, to the newsletter put out by that organization. The name of it, which is What's on the Menu, because not only was it a description of the philosophy of governance and municipal management within Downers Grove, but it was put in a very creative way that would both educate and entertain at the same time, literally put in the form of a cafe menu, so the reader could go through the menu and choose different choices while learning about how it is that Downers Grove has made its own in the world of municipal government as a leading edge organization. And again, just another example, and there are many others. I don't mean to undermine anyone by just singling out a few. I know Allison was involved as well. I forgot to mention her. But it's another example of how Downers Grove has been recognized as a leader among municipalities by being invited to speak at these national conferences and share its experiences with its peers across the country. Before I wrap up, I just want to say a couple of things. And one, first of all, I trust that the foregoing demonstrates very clearly in your mind that the state of the village of Downers Grove is strong and that we are on a path of sustained success. Now, 2013 was a terrific year, but we are already not resting on our laurels, but well underway with the 2014-2015 projects. And the slide that's up on the screen now will just give you a little idea of the timeline of some of the high priority and medium priority and other projects that the village council and village staff are already hard at work on accomplishing or working on accomplishing for the 2014-2015 year. And you'll certainly hear more about some of these projects next year, but keep an eye on them throughout the year as we report on progress on these various projects. So here we are, barely into February, and we're already got our heels dug in and working very hard. Sleeves rolled up, heels dug in, working very hard on the next batch of projects, which is a formidable list, as our village manager and others will certainly attest to. And the other thing I want to mention is that none of these successes or any of those that lie ahead would be possible without the extraordinary efforts of a number of groups of people. First and foremost, the talented and dedicated men and women who work for the Village of Downers Grove, the generous and giving volunteers who serve on our boards and commissions, our partners at other taxing organizations that we worked with in terms of cooperation, communication, and collaboration, of course, the vision and dedication of my colleagues here in the Village Council, and probably most importantly, support from the community at large. I like to think of it as sort of the theme that the Chicago, or the model that the Chicago Blackhawks have, and they've been rather successful lately, I think most would agree. And their motto is one team, one goal. And I think the more that we can mimic that same model, I think the more we will continue to be able to share successes like this with you in 2015 and beyond. I'd like to thank everyone for their rapt attention tonight and for allowing me to give you the 2013 report and 2014 State of the Village Address. And also want to thank you for helping us to help you keep our community an exceptional place to live, work, learn, play, and thrive. Thank you very much. That ends the Mayor's report.